I will never forget the sound of her footsteps rumbling like wet thunder in the middle of the night. It was so dark I could barely see my own hands, but the trembling of the ground was unmistakable. Each vibration sent tiny clouds of dust drifting down onto my face while I held my breath, pressed against the stone wall as if that could somehow make me invisible. But there's no hiding from someone who stands nearly 10 meters tall. Not from her, not from the queen. The first time I saw her, days before that night, I thought the stories were exaggerations. I had heard tales about a gigantic woman with a majestic presence and an unpredictable temper, someone capable of commanding armies with a single look. But when I saw her step into the throne room, her silhouette framed against the reddish sunset light, I realized reality was far more overwhelming than the legend. Her skin had a warm, almost golden tone, as if the sun itself had decided to live inside her. Her dark brown hair fell in thick cascades, moving like a silent river every time she turned her head. And her eyes, huge and luminous, seemed to hold centuries of stories she had never shared with anyone. And that woman, that radiant and terrifying giantess, was now walking straight toward the door of my chambers. Before we begin, I ask that you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us where in the world you're listening from. This helps us bring you more stories like this. Let's go. The deep thudding stopped abruptly, and for a few seconds of absolute silence, I wondered if the nightmare had ended. But then I heard her voice, muffled by the heavy wood, a whisper, as large and soft as a wind that was aware of its own power. "Open the door, little one. I need to speak with you." I froze. Facing those enormous eyes, again those eyes that seemed to see through everything, was the last thing I wanted. But there was no ignoring her. If she wished, she could rip the door off its hinges like a dry leaf. I took a deep breath, knowing there was no escape, and opened the door. She was there, bent down so she could see me. She wore a purple gown that looked like it was made of smoke and silk, swirling gently around her colossal legs. Her lips formed a soft smile, but there was something else in her gaze, a dangerous mix of determination, sorrow, and a fervor I didn't understand. "You know why I'm here," she said, her voice vibrating around me as if it were coming from inside my chest. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. "Your Majesty, I already gave you my answer." She knew that. Just a few hours earlier, she had asked Morlike ordered me to accompany her in her royal chambers. Not in the way the rumors suggested, but as her nightly companion, to listen to her stories and, in her own words, push away the shadow that stalked her in loneliness. But I couldn't. I wasn't meant to be the emotional refuge of a queen who could crush a carriage if she misstepped. It was too much. Too much of everything, and yet, here she was. "I need you to come with me," she said, her tone lower now. Her massive fingers twitched as if she were holding back the urge to reach for me. "You don't understand what's happening." She stepped back to give me space. The moonlight lit her face, revealing something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. A deep, genuine fear. "My queen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I cannot enter your chambers. It wouldn't be appropriate. And besides, I'm not the person you think I am." Her lashes trembled, and the faint smile she carried broke apart. "I didn't ask for appropriate," she murmured. "I asked for truth. And now I can't leave you here." The ground shook as she leaned closer, her shadow enveloping me completely. Her enormous eyes locked onto mine, and I felt the entire room shrink around us, leaving us suspended in an empty void. "Because if you don't come with me," she said, her voice nearly breaking, "something terrible is going to happen. And I cannot allow you to be responsible for it." I stepped back, confused, my heartbeat crashing against my ribs as if trying to escape. "Responsible for what?" I asked. She let out a long, heavy sigh, filled with a weight I couldn't decipher. "The madness isn't mine," she said. "It belongs to what has already awakened." And then she extended her massive hand toward me, and I understood I had no choice. The surface of her hand was warm, almost like touching a sun-soaked wall after a summer afternoon. I hesitated for a second before leaning onto it, not out of fear of falling, but because of the strange intimacy of the gesture. She was a queen, a giantess, a force of nature, yet there was something in her eyes that made me feel as if, for a moment, I was the only fixed point in her collapsing world. She lifted me carefully, as gently as if she were holding a butterfly between her fingers. My stomach flipped when she raised me several meters into the air, bringing me closer to her face. Her breathing was deep and rhythmic, a tide that washed over me every time she exhaled. "Don't look down," she warned, a hint of concern in her voice. I didn't. Looking at her was enough to make me forget the height. As she walked with me in her hand, the castle transformed around us. The columns looked like strands of reflected light across her massive arms. Each step echoed through the halls like a distant drum. But what really unsettled me was the silence. A silence that shouldn't have been there. Normally, even at night, the castle towers hummed with movement, Guards, servants, distant conversations, but now, nothing. Only her footsteps and my nervous breaths. "Where is everyone?" I whispered. She didn't answer at once. She made her way into a side corridor that was rarely used, one leading to the oldest chambers of the castle. The light was dim there, filtering through cracks in the stone walls. Even from so close, I could see tension tightening every muscle in her face. "I sent them out of the castle," she finally said. "All of them." A chill crawled through me. "Why would you do that?" She stopped, tilting her hand slightly so I could steady myself. Her expression grew solemn, more solemn than anything I had ever seen on her before. "Because I can't risk anyone seeing it wake up." Those words dropped onto me like a slab of ice. But before I could ask her what she meant, I heard a distant, deep, guttural sound that seemed to rise from the very guts of the castle. The queen turned her head toward the noise, and I saw her jaw tremble for a fraction of a second. "Too late," she murmured. The pressure in the air shifted. It felt like something massive, something ancient had just taken its first breath after centuries. My hands grew sweaty as she walked faster, her footsteps pounding like a frantic heartbeat. "My queen, what's happening?" I asked, gripping one of her fingers for balance. She looked at me with an expression I never imagined could belong to someone so colossal. "Vulnerability? I did something foolish," she admitted. "Something I thought I could control, and now only you can help me." I blinked, stunned. "Me? But I'm just a scribe, your majesty. I have no powers, no influence. No, I don't need your strength," she cut in. "I need your word." She stepped through a giant archway into a circular chamber, where the reddish glow of ancient torches illuminated walls covered in inscriptions. Many were cracked, as if an earthquake had passed through. The air smelled of damp stone, ancient dust, and something else. Something metallic. "This place. What is it?" I asked. "The Chamber of the Bond," she replied. "The heart of the pact that keeps our kingdom safe." In the center of the chamber, a massive pedestal held an object wrapped in chains of black iron. It seemed to pulse, as if it had its own heartbeat. Each throb made the air tremble. "I released part of its essence," she continued. "I thought I could use its power to prevent a war. I thought I could control it." She looked at me, and for a moment her voice cracked. But I was wrong. The chains suddenly tightened, rattling violently. A deafening rumble filled the chamber. A huge, blurry eye formed of dense shadow opened between the iron links. I froze in place. She pulled me closer to her chest, shielding me in an instinctive gesture. I could feel the immense hammering of her heart, almost matching the pulses of the artifact. "It speaks to me," she whispered, tormented. "It calls to me, it demands." "What does it demand?" I asked, my throat tightening with dread. She closed her eyes and drew a long breath. "It demands that I not be alone. That my will be joined with another. That my heart have a reflection." And then she looked at me. In those enormous eyes there was pleading, sorrow, and a deep fear of losing control over something that threatened everyone. "I never asked you to be my comfort," she said softly. "I asked you to be my anchor." The dark eye of the artifact blinked again. The entire chamber shook. "Please, help me before it's too late." The entire chamber vibrated as if a gigantic heart were beating around us. Each pulse came from the chained artifact, and every time that shadow-made eye opened, I felt reality stretch like the world was fabric, and something inside it was trying to tear it apart. The queen held me even closer, and her voice trembled when she spoke, though she tried to hide it. "I need you to keep your mind steady," she said. "It's trying to confuse you, just like it does to me." Her closeness was overwhelming. Her face was so near I could see tiny golden flecks shifting in her irises like living embers. I could also see the tension in her jaw, the immense effort it took to remain calm. It was strange. She was a giantess, powerful, feared by everyone. But in that moment, she looked like a woman fighting an invisible storm. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I took a deep breath and finally managed to whisper, "What do I have to do?" She lowered her gaze as if afraid of my reaction. "This bond, this being, requires balance. My strength alone isn't enough. If I connect with it without an emotional counterweight, it will consume me. I need you to be my anchor, someone who can hold me from the outside while I face the connection." I stayed silent. It wasn't a small request, and it wasn't what the world gossiped about in rumors. This went far beyond that. It wasn't about trivial companionship. It was something deep, almost spiritual. A connection that could crush me if I wasn't strong enough. But before I could answer, the artifact burst with dark energy, lighting up the chamber in a red glow. The queen stepped back, shielding me with her arm like a living barrier. I could feel the immense power surging beneath her skin. The eye opened again, and this time a voice filled with echoes emerged from within, one that didn't sound human or animal, but like the sum of many layered shadows. She is incomplete, the voice murmured. You, little one, are the missing piece. The queen gritted her teeth. Shut up, you won't drag him into this. But the artifact responded with a roar that sent pieces of stone crashing from the ceiling. The chains tightened, creaking with a sound that felt almost alive. I felt something strange in my mind, as if a cold current were trying to slip into my thoughts. Searching, molding, I clung to the queen's finger, trying to stay present. Queen, what exactly is that thing? I forced out. She hesitated before answering, as if the weight of her words might break her. It's an ancient consciousness made of desire and fear. A force created to protect this kingdom, but also to dominate it if left uncontrolled. The original pact kept it balanced, but over time the power faded. I wanted to renew it. I wanted to save everyone. She looked at me with such intense sincerity that I had to glance away for a moment. But I didn't know it would ask for this. The walls shuddered. A dark tendril slipped out between the chains, twisting through the air. It didn't touch the queen, but it probed the space around us like an animal sniffing the air. If we don't seal this now, she said, urgency sharpening her voice, it will break free. And if that happens, no army or magic will be able to stop it. And how do we seal it? I asked, my voice shaking more with every word. She inhaled deeply, as though every sentence she was about to speak weighed heavily on her soul. I need you to take my hand. Not as a subject, nor as a sacrifice, but as someone who trusts me. Her free hand lowered slowly toward me. It was enormous, warm, its skin marked with golden glimmers that pulsed with her breath. I had seen that hand destroy walls, lift wounded soldiers, point toward entire destinies. But now she offered it with humility, almost with shyness. If you give me your trust, she said softly, I'll be able to face the connection without losing myself. My legs trembled. The artifact roared again. She pressed her lips together, as if fighting against a force trying to invade her mind. Please, she added, her voice thinning to a fragile thread. I can't do this alone. The tendril of shadow drifted closer, as if wanting to wrap around us both. My heart pounded. I looked at her hand. I looked at her enormous eyes, and I understood that, in some inexplicable way, the decision I made would change not just my life, but the fate of the entire kingdom. I swallowed hard and reached my hand out to hers. When my hand touched hers, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. It was as if the energy in her body traveled from the tips of her enormous fingers straight into the center of my chest. Her skin was smooth, almost silky, but beneath that softness pulsed a living force, vibrant. Powerful, so intense, it took effort not to lose my composure. Despite her colossal size, she curled her fingers around my hand with impossible delicacy, as though she feared hurting me. Her eyes softened, and for a brief instant, it seemed the entire chamber stopped even the heartbeat of the artifact. That's it, she whispered. Stay here with me. But the moment shattered with a burst of dark energy, the artifact released a wave that snuffed out the torches, leaving the room lit only by the reddish glow emanating from its eye. Shadows writhed across the walls like living creatures. I could feel its presence inside my mind, brushing against my thoughts, trying to slip in. The queen tightened her grip slightly. Don't listen to it. Keep your mind steady. I'm trying, I muttered, as an icy chill crept up my spine. She lowered me carefully, placing me on a low stone platform directly in front of her. Now I stood only a few meters beneath her enormous face. Her eyes were two restless stars, burning with determination. I'm going to try to contain it, she said. But when it begins, it will try to replace my thoughts with its own. And if I lose control, I need you to bring me back. How am I supposed to do that? I asked, trying to keep my voice from sounding as fragile as I felt. You already do, she replied. Her gaze locked onto mine. You're the only person in this kingdom who speaks to me without fear, without reverence, without a mask. Your sincerity is my anchor. Just stay with me. Talk to me. Don't let me fall into its voice. The artifact let out a deep roar, and the chains tightened so much they seemed ready to snap. The dark eye opened fully, an infinite spiral of liquid shadows. The queen stepped forward, lifting both arms. Golden lines appeared across her skin, spreading from her shoulders to her wrists, glowing like molten metal. The entire chamber shook with a colossal thunderclap as she channeled her power. "Bond restored," she roared, her voice booming like 1,000 thunderstorms. A surge of golden energy burst from her hands into the artifact. The shadows responded violently, stretching like tentacles, wrapping around her arms, trying to pull her into the core of darkness. She gritted her teeth and held her stance. I stepped forward instinctively. Queen. She didn't hear me, not me. The darkness was thickening, trying to engulf her. I saw her expression begin to shift, hardening as if something inside her were trying to take control. The artifacts, I spoke again, but this time I heard it directly in my mind. "Give her to me. Let her fall. She belongs to me." The queen let out a low groan as if fighting unbearable pain. Her gaze clouded for a heartbeat. "No." I shouted with everything in me, stepping right up to her. "Listen to me. Don't go. You're not his. Look at me." A shadow slid across her face. Her pupils dilated. Her expression began to hollow, as though her will was dissolving. "Queen, queen, please." My voice cracked. "You're not alone. Remember who you are. Remember who spoke to you without faltering in the library that night. Remember..." Look away. "Remember that I trust you." Her breath hitched. The shadows rippled angrily. I screamed again, "Look at me," and then she did. Her colossal eyes locked onto mine, clear for a single, precious moment. I saw her humanity, her fear, her strength, her vulnerability, all woven together. A tear the size of a raindrop slid down her cheek. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not letting you fall." She drew in a shaky breath, and her voice emerged with almost superhuman effort. "My anchor." The golden lines on her skin blazed with blinding light. The shadows shrieked. The artifact roared, and in a burst of radiance, the energy recoiled. The chains snapped shut with a deafening crack. The eye went dark. And the queen collapsed to her knees, exhausted, gasping, her enormous hand trembling as it reached for me. I ran to her. Her voice was barely a thread. "Thank you for not letting go." The queen remained on her knees, her deep breaths resonating like a heavy wind that filled the entire chamber. I could still see faint golden sparks traveling across her skin, fading slowly like embers after a storm. When she finally lifted her head to look at me, something in her had changed. The power was still there, but a new calm rested within her, something I had never seen before. As if she had finally recovered a piece of herself that had been lost for years. She extended her hand toward me, not to lift me, not to command me, but simply to bring me closer, to have me near. I stepped onto her palm without hesitation, and she raised me gently until I was level with her face. Her enormous eyes shone with deep exhaustion, but also with a gratitude so genuine it left me speechless. "I thought I was going to lose myself," she murmured, her voice soft enough that it barely vibrated in the air. Not to the artifact, but to my own mind. I nodded, swallowing the emotion tightening my throat. "But you didn't." She closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling in relief. "Because you stopped me. Small or not, you were stronger than the darkness." The chamber was silent, the shadows still, the artifact asleep. Everything seemed to hold its breath, as if the castle itself were listening. Then she spoke slowly, as if the words cost her strength. "What I asked of you earlier, what you misunderstood as some capricious command, it wasn't an attempt to possess you." She opened her eyes, and the torchlight reflected in her pupils like trapped stars. "It was a plea, from someone who carried an impossible burden alone for far too long." My heart pounded. "I know that now." She lowered her gaze, something almost shy in her expression, a contrast beyond belief for someone of her colossal size. "But I hurt you. I frightened you. I exposed you to a danger you didn't deserve." "I was afraid," I admitted. "But if I hadn't come with you, if I had left you alone, all of this would have ended badly. For you, for the kingdom, for everyone." The queen inhaled deeply, and for a moment I saw her wrestling with something inside her. Then she murmured what I felt when I nearly lost myself. It was like falling into a bottomless pit, but your voice, your presence, it was like a rope holding me. I'm not used to needing anyone, and even less someone so. She paused, searching for the right word. So true. I felt my face warm, but I held her gaze. My size doesn't matter. I'm here, and I'll be here if you need me again. Her lips parted slightly, surprised by my words. Then she smiled. A real smile, warm, radiant. One that made the stone walls look like they were melting into liquid gold. I glanced toward the chained artifact. Is it truly sealed? For now, she said, looking back at it. But the seal will need to be reinforced. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. What awoke won't return to sleep completely. Her voice gained a soft gravity. And when that day comes, I don't intend to face it without you. A shiver ran down my spine, not from fear, but from a strange sense of responsibility. And from a bond I now understood far better. She brought me close to her chest, and I could hear the slow, deep rhythm of her giant heart. You are my anchor, she whispered, and I'm not losing you. The silence broke as the ancient doors of the chamber groaned, as if the castle were waking from a long sleep. The queen stood up, still tired, but tall and regal as the imposing figure she was. We need to return upstairs, she said. The people will think the tremors were an earthquake, and perhaps it's better if they believe that. I nodded. And what will you say if they ask about me? She smiled again, with that fascinating, mysterious glimmer I had learned to recognize. I'll tell the truth. What truth? I feared the answer, but wanted it to. She held me closer, almost on her shoulder, as she began walking toward the exit. That you saved the queen. I didn't know what to say. The weight of those words stayed with me as the castle began filling again with echoes, light, and life. Outside, the cold wind announced a new dawn, one that felt different, cleaner, more hopeful, but also more unsettling. Because although we had won that battle, as the queen breathed deeply while looking out at the horizon, I knew the shadow of the artifact had not vanished forever. She looked at me one last time. This story doesn't end here, she said, with a touch of melancholy and hope intertwined. There are secrets I still haven't told you, and forces that will not remain still. The wind lifted her giant hair, forming a dark halo around her radiant face, and in that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. I had entered her world by accident, but now I was part of it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps us keep bringing more enchanting stories like this to brighten your day. And tell us in the comments which city in the world you're listening from. See you next time.